Welcome to Life Stories, where one woman's dinner reservation turned into a reckoning that no one saw coming. What would you do if the man you loved, the man you built a life with, was living a lie so deep it could destroy more than just your heart? In the next few minutes, you'll witness a journey of betrayal so devastating it shattered not only a marriage, but everything she thought she knew about loyalty, truth, and herself. But this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's about the quiet, calculated rise of a woman who refused to stay broken. Stay with us, because the note she left on that white linen table changed everything. Now let's begin. Rachel hadn't planned on going out that night. The original plan had been Thai takeout, a glass of Malbec, and catching up on emails from her home office in Brooklyn Heights. But fate had a flair for irony, and so there she was, seated alone at a linen-draped table in Alouette, a candlelit bistro nestled between the polished facades of Madison Avenue, wearing a black silk dress she'd bought on a whim but never dared to wear. Not until tonight. She traced the rim of her wine glass with one manicured finger, gaze fixed not on the man she used to love, but on the woman sitting across from him. Nathan laughed, tossing his head back the way he used to when he thought no one was watching. His hand brushed against the blonde's wrist, and she leaned into him, comfortable, familiar. Rachel knew that gesture. It was the same one he used on her the night he proposed in Tulum, with a nervous charm that once made her feel like the only woman in the room. Now, it made her sick. It had taken her 3 hours to go from wife to witness. 3 hours since Megan, an old college friend turned accidental prophet, had spotted Nathan making a reservation for 2 at Alouette and called Rachel, her voice thick with dread. 3 hours since Rachel had confirmed the reservation, applied lipstick with surgical precision, and walked into this place not to confront, but to observe. It had taken even less time for her heart to break. 10 years of marriage. A home they built room by room. A future sketched in shared Google calendars. All of it now shattered into 15 words. 15 razor-sharp words scribbled on a note card she had just handed to the waiter. Enjoy your dinner. I hope it tastes as good as the lie you told me this morning. She watched the waiter approach Nathan's table. The note was delivered discreetly, like a secret about to detonate. Nathan read it, paused, then read it again. Panic struck him like a sudden storm, his coffee-colored eyes widening, jaw slackening. He knocked over his water glass. Rachel didn't flinch. He searched the restaurant like a hunted man. When their eyes finally met, Rachel raised her glass in a silent toast. For a moment, time stopped. She held his gaze with the quiet ferocity of a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything left to claim. Then she stood, turned, and walked out of Alouette without a word. The wind outside was sharp and sweet with the scent of rain. Only then did she allow the first tear to fall. Back home, the apartment was still and far too clean. Rachel stood in the doorway for a full minute before stepping inside, the sound of her heels echoing like gunshots on hardwood. She turned off the hallway light and sank into the leather armchair Nathan had insisted on buying, though it had never quite fit the room or their lives. The note hadn't just exposed his betrayal. It had exposed something darker, something she hadn't wanted to admit for months, maybe even years. Nathan had grown distant, but not in the way couples drift in the night, lost to work and routine. His distance had been strategic, cunning. Late meetings, mysterious business trips, and the new cologne she didn't recognize. Passwords on devices that once laid open on the kitchen counter. At first, she chalked it up to stress, a midlife lull in a high-stakes career. But now she saw it clearly. He had been preparing for an exit. And yet, there had been no note from him. Just a growing silence, loud enough to fill every corner of their lives. Rachel's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Finally, she picked it up. Please, I need to explain. It's not what it looks like. I love you. Only you. The audacity. She powered off the phone, walked into their shared bedroom, her bedroom, she reminded herself, and stared at the reflection of a woman she didn't recognize anymore. The hollow cheekbones, the fire behind her eyes, the silent scream buried in a poised posture. She remembered something her mother used to say. People don't fall out of love. They climb out, rung by rung, choice by choice. Rachel had held on to every rung. Nathan had jumped. In the silence of their penthouse, Rachel began to plan. Not revenge, not exactly, but something colder, sharper. She opened her laptop, opened their bank accounts. Something didn't add up, a dozen strange charges. A bracelet from Tiffany's billed as a consulting expense. Hotel stays in Chicago, Miami, and a folder she hadn't noticed before. Meridian Acquisition Confidential. She clicked it open. Dozens of PDFs, emails, scanned contracts. At first, it seemed like the usual corporate jargon until she spotted names. Lindsay Monroe, a competitor firm, Vanessa's employer, then something else, a wire transfer, marked strategic research bonus. Rachel's blood ran cold. Nathan wasn't just cheating on her. He was potentially committing securities fraud. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then she began to forward documents, quietly, methodically, to a new private email. She didn't know exactly what she was building, but she knew she was building something that would matter. When Nathan finally walked through the door at 3:12 a.m., disheveled and reeking of guilt, Rachel didn't say a word. She didn't shout, didn't cry. She just looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a husband, not even a stranger, but a man already standing in the ruins of what he'd destroyed. What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be a carefully disguised enemy? Is silence ever more powerful than the truth shouted out loud? Rachel thought she had lost everything. But what if this betrayal was only the beginning of her rise? Continue to part 2, The Woman He Never Saw Coming. Nathan slept in the guest room now. At least, that's what Rachel assumed. They no longer spoke outside of logistics. Milk, mail, meetings. Their home, once filled with the soft echoes of laughter and overlapping Spotify playlists, had gone silent. The kind of silence that grows like ivy, curling into the corners of every conversation you didn't have. But Rachel had learned something in the weeks since that dinner at Alouette. Silence could be a strategy. By day, she played the composed wife. She smiled politely when neighbors waved, answered emails for her freelance finance consulting gigs, even brought a casserole to a local charity event. Nathan watched her with unease, like a man waiting for the floor to collapse beneath him. By night, she became something else entirely. She collected evidence. Every text message he hadn't deleted, every bank statement that didn't add up, the offshore account in the Caymans, the wire transfers masked as legal retainers. And then the final crack in the dam, a series of messages between Nathan and Lindsay Monroe. Not just romantic drivel, but discussions of confidential financial data, explicit strategy, even references to upcoming layoffs at Meridian. And worse, the messages made it clear he'd used her. Lindsay wasn't just a mistress. She was a tool, a pawn in a game Nathan had been playing long before he ever stepped into that restaurant. Rachel sat frozen in her home office, the glow of the screen casting long shadows across her face. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, what washed over her was something else. Grief. Not for Nathan, not even for the marriage, but for the version of herself who had once believed love was enough, who thought that loyalty was protection, that being good meant you'd be safe. That woman was gone now. The next morning, Rachel made a call to someone she hadn't spoken to in 10 years. Morgan Chase, came the voice on the other end, clipped and precise. It's Rachel. Rachel Lowell. A pause, then a soft intake of breath. Well, I'll be damned. Morgan had been her roommate at Yale. Now she was one of Manhattan's most feared divorce attorneys, specializing in high-profile, high-asset separations. When they met for lunch at a quiet bistro near Central Park, Morgan didn't waste time with small talk. Start at the beginning, she said, pen poised. Rachel told her everything, from the note at Alouette to the financial deceit to the possible insider trading. Morgan didn't blink. You're sitting on a bomb. Question is, do you want to detonate it? Rachel stirred her coffee. I want justice and freedom in that order. Then here's what we do, Morgan said. Document everything. Don't confront him. Don't leave the house. And most importantly, don't give him a reason to suspect what's coming. Rachel followed the instructions to the letter. Every night after Nathan fell asleep, or at least pretended to, she'd creep into his office and scan files, screenshot chats, photograph credit card statements. It became a ritual, a way to reclaim control. Piece by piece, she was assembling not just a legal case, but a story. A story where she was no longer the collateral damage, but the catalyst. And then came the twist she hadn't expected. One Tuesday afternoon, as she was filing away a printed chain of emails, Rachel noticed something odd. A voice memo, buried in an old folder on Nathan's desktop. It was labeled for R. Her hands trembled as she clicked play. Nathan's voice crackled through the speakers. If you're hearing this, it probably means everything has fallen apart, and you found the files. All of it. God, I don't even know why I'm recording this. Rachel leaned in, heart pounding. I loved you. I did. Maybe I still do. But somewhere along the way, I got scared of being ordinary, of getting old. I let ambition drown out the sound of our life together. I started chasing someone who saw me as more than a husband or a financial advisor. I needed to feel powerful. He paused. But it was never supposed to go this far. The things I did, they were wrong. And if you choose to burn it all down, I get it. Just know it was never about her. It was about me. Always was. Rachel sat back in her chair, stunned. She had expected lies, excuses, but not this. Not a man unraveling in real time, and that was the thing. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That night, as Nathan stood at the stove pretending to cook dinner for a marriage already dead, Rachel asked, "How's work?" He froze, then smiled too quickly. "Busy, lots of moving parts." "I bet," she said, eyes calm. "Tell me, does Lindsay still think you two are building a future together?" He dropped the spatula. She didn't flinch. "Don't worry," Rachel said quietly. "I already know everything." Nathan's face turned a shade paler. "I just wanted to see if you'd finally tell the truth," she continued. "But I see now, you wouldn't recognize the truth if it held a knife to your throat." She walked out of the kitchen, leaving him staring after her, the smell of burning garlic thick in the air. Do you think regret is enough to save someone who destroyed everything they once claimed to love? In the next chapter, Rachel makes a move that will forever shift the balance of power. Stay tuned. The morning of the board meeting arrived with an eerie stillness. Rachel stood in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting the collar of her tailored navy suit. Every detail of her appearance had been considered. The smooth bun at her nape, the pearl studs that once belonged to her grandmother, the nude heels, steady, quiet power. Nathan was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee and reviewing his notes. He didn't notice Rachel studying him from the hallway. He looked tired, like a man wearing a costume that no longer fit. His hands trembled slightly as he scrolled through the slides on his laptop. He didn't see her walk in. "Big day," Rachel said, cool and even. Nathan looked up, startled. "Yeah," he muttered. "Could define the next decade for us. You know, if it goes through." Rachel walked to the counter, poured herself a cup of coffee, and took a measured sip. "Well then," she said, locking eyes with him, "we should make sure everyone knows the truth." He blinked, unsure how to read her. At 9:45 a.m., Rachel stepped into the sleek glass lobby of Carson Capital. The receptionist greeted her by name, surprise flickering across her face. Rachel hadn't been here in years, not since Nathan had gently suggested she stay out of the business side of things. But she had every right to be there. She was still a major shareholder. She walked with quiet purpose down the marble corridor, heels echoing with confidence. Her presence turned heads. She could feel the stares, the whispered questions. She didn't care. She had nothing left to hide, and nothing left to lose. The boardroom was already half full. Nathan stood at the head of the long table, flanked by his legal counsel and two senior executives. He saw her enter and stiffened, as if bracing for a wave he knew was coming but still hoped might pass. Rachel took a seat against the back wall, silent, composed. She didn't need to speak. Not yet. The chairman, Richard Cole, opened the meeting. There was a review of the company's Q3 performance, some mild applause at a minor acquisition in Denver. Then came the main event. Nathan stood, shoulders squared. "Today," he began, "I'm proud to present an opportunity that could redefine Carson Capital's future, the acquisition of Meridian Technologies." He clicked through the slides with practiced confidence. Profit projections, market shares, insider insights that made the deal appear bulletproof. The board listened, intrigued, impressed. Then Rachel stood. "Mr. Chairman," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "as a shareholder and financial ethics consultant, I have evidence that calls into question the legality of this acquisition." Gasps swept across the room. All eyes turned to her. "I've compiled documentation," she continued, connecting her laptop to the projector, "that suggests this proposal is built on confidential, non-public information obtained through an unethical and possibly illegal relationship with a Meridian executive." Nathan's face went white. Slide after slide, Rachel laid out the evidence. The emails, the transfers, the recordings, some provided directly by Lindsay Monroe after discovering she had been manipulated and betrayed by Nathan, just like Rachel had. There was no rage in Rachel's voice, only precision. It wasn't vengeance. It was truth. By the time she finished, the room was a vacuum of stunned silence. The chairman cleared his throat. "This is alarming." Nathan stood up, but his voice broke. "She's twisting things. She's doing this because of our marriage." Rachel held up a hand. "This isn't about our marriage anymore, Nathan. This is about integrity, about the company, about everyone who trusted you." The general counsel leaned forward. "We'll need to delay any vote on the acquisition and begin a formal investigation." Nathan sat down slowly, his confidence deflated. He looked at Rachel not with anger, but with the dull recognition of a man finally out of moves. Outside, in the bright New York air, Rachel didn't feel triumphant. She felt clean, like she had shed a second skin. A week later, Rachel sat across from Lindsay Monroe in a quiet cafe in the West Village. Lindsay looked tired, wary. "I didn't know," she said, "about you, about what he was doing with the company. I thought we were building something." "I know," Rachel said softly. "So did I." There was a pause. Then Lindsay asked, "Why help me after everything?" Rachel stirred her tea. "Because he used us both, and because women tearing each other down only helps men like him." Lindsay looked away, eyes glistening. "Thank you," she whispered. Rachel didn't respond. She didn't need to. The divorce finalized 2 months later. Rachel took what was rightfully hers, her share of the company, the Manhattan condo, and a quiet dignity that no one could steal. Nathan resigned from Carson Capital under growing pressure. The SEC investigation had begun. And though Rachel never testified, the documents she'd submitted anonymously were damning. He moved out of state alone. Spring came early to New York. Rachel stood on the balcony of her new apartment in Tribeca, a smaller place, but hers entirely. She was barefoot, a paintbrush in one hand, a glass of wine in the other. A half-finished canvas stood before her, swirls of dark blue giving way to warm gold. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was honest. Her phone buzzed. "Dinner Friday? You, me, a bookstore, and zero financial fraud?" It was Henry, the literature professor she'd met at a gallery opening weeks ago. Kind eyes, slow smile, no secrets. She hadn't decided what she wanted with him yet, but she smiled, typing, "Maybe." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Rachel breathed in deeply. She wasn't healed, not entirely. Some parts of her still ached in the dark, but she was whole, and that was enough. Later that night, she opened a drawer in her desk and unfolded a letter she had never sent. "Nathan, there was a time I loved you so fiercely it scared me. That love deserved better than what you gave it. But I'm not angry anymore. Not because I forgive you, but because I've forgiven myself for staying, for believing, for hoping. I used to think the note I left at the restaurant ended everything, but maybe it began something too. A new life, a new version of me. Goodbye." She lit a match, and the letter burned away slowly in the sink, curling into ash. Tomorrow would come, and she was ready for it. How did this story make you feel? And what would you have done in Rachel's shoes? Comment 100 if you loved this story. Tell us where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that strength comes in quiet, steady steps. Thanks for watching Life Stories.